apologies for the technical and look, man, you know, looking forward to the weekend, looking forward to Super Bowl weekend. Look, man, this is obviously the biggest game of the year. More recent time they were there was actually 8 years ago today, and though I will say I would absolutely a Super Bowl right now without a question. I mean, obviously that's obvious for everyone than what we're getting ready to talk about here tonight. But first and foremost, man, y'all let me know if I sound good. Just let me know, man. Say I'm gonna do what everyone else does. If you can hear me, just say something, say anything. Make sure that so we can have this. All right, appreciate you, Jerry. And then just let me know if we're having any audio issues on my end, and I will make sure if it's cutting out, try to get it addressed. I feel like things are running smoother now. So I wasn't planning on going live until after the Super Bowl. I was planning on maybe sometime later next week, few days after the Super Bowl, going live and really finally putting a bow on what has been this 2024 season. Because we know that even though the Falcons season has been over for a month exactly, the NFL season isn't over until the clock hits triple zeros in the Super Bowl and the confetti starts to fall. That's when the season is over. Obviously, the Falcons have been looking forward to 2025 for conference that I was thinking about going live for, but don't get me wrong. I will listen as much as we're complaining for this team, loving this bit. Where okay, let me just walk a couple steps back for, but at the same time, it really stings not being there. And we're going to talk about, a lot of why we weren't in the playoffs. Yesterday morning, Kirk Cousins, I think it was K. Adams he was talking to, and Kirk basically running through and out his future in the NFL, obviously his future in Atlanta. Is the starting, but um, I just who isn't going to look at Kirk Cousins as a potential option for a star. Needed last year a guy who could hopefully come in, stabilize the position. While you're looking for a long term answer, there's some teams out there who could be in that boat. So obviously, but Kirk has a lot to think about. But and it's been going around everywhere. Obviously, I'm late to the party, but I still have to come on here and really talk about it. And the StreamYard link is in there because I feel like this is a conversation we got to get deep into it. I'm going to try to remain calm tonight. I am talking about this, but it's really infuriating, and it's kind of polarizing too, as far as who should get the blame. And I'm going to tell you all about who I think should get the blame for this. However, Kirk Cousins went on Good Morning Football and basically, while talking, did what Kirk Cousins does best and spilled the beans. Told you what actually was going on behind the scenes. And um he said that during that same the second Saints game, um and that really messed his shoulder up. That messed his right shoulder up. Now, I think we really need to, look at it from this perspective. Kirk Cousins started the season out weeks 1 through 9 overall looking like maybe, and it's not like he was going to win it, but we were talking about Kirk after that Dallas game as if he can continue this level of quarterback play, he could be an MVP candidate. We're talking about, or at least somebody we're talking about as far as he had one of the better seasons. He is definitely in contention for comeback player of the year. Um, and it only felt like things were going to get better. It did because obviously, I still think at that point, looking at it, we had some questions maybe about was Washington really, that good? Had they really faced anyone yet? No one really expected a team like the Panthers to finish off strong. So there was a lot of things that after week 9, things looked promising. And most of all, we were 6-3. And we were pretty much not going to deny that this was a team that was firmly in the driver's seat to the playoffs. So obviously, when we blink and we're 6-7, we're obviously asking ourselves, well, how the hell did we get here? And I think one of the things that obviously we saw hurt the Falcons over that 4-game losing streak was the quarterback play, was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins went from getting the ball to receivers, getting the ball out relatively quickly, to basically all of a sudden looking looking like Jimmy Clausen, looking like Mark Sanchez, looking like you can name all these awful quarterbacks. Desmond Ritter, except without any legs, because Des could run. So it was how the hell does this happen? This just doesn't happen where you're playing like an MVP candidate. It only looks like you're going to get better to you're now on the bench just a few weeks later. That doesn't add up, and none of that really makes sense. So first and foremost, Kirk being injured, there's really no other way to explain it other than he was dealing with some type of injury that was nagging him. And considering a 36-year-old quarterback who's already coming off an Achilles, and doesn't, have, listen, more years have passed Kirk than are ahead of him. Let's be real about that. So yes, this is going to affect him differently than maybe it would have even affected someone who is 25. Those shoulder injuries, if you are hit the wrong way, it doesn't matter how old you are. That can, if you don't be honest with yourself. So is Kirk blameless in, all of this? No, because now this brings me to the next point. We heard after the Denver game, I believe, from Kirk that he was not injured. Because remember, there was that one time during that week, Kirk popped up on the injury report on a Wednesday, which they said was a walkthrough. And that's another thing I'm going to get into in a second, because we're talking about the Kirk Cousins thing here and him being injured, but there's something else we got to address here. There's something else we got to address. Um, however, we heard that Kirk was not hurt. They really brushed it off. They went out of their way to the fans that Kirk was fine, even though they knew he wasn't. Even though Kirk knew he wasn't. Now, is Kirk blameless in this? No. Realize, because you don't know your body better than yourself. Kirk knew that injury wasn't just one of those. It's going to be a stinger for a day or two, but I'll be fine by next game. No, that's an injury that it's only going to get worse and worse the longer you go on without getting it repaired or getting some medical attention to it. And I think for that, yeah, Kirk should have reported it and Kirk should have been honest. However, everyone here is wanting to basically gaslight Kirk Cousins for this. Now, I've gaslit him where I feel like he needs to be gaslighted. I don't have the same sympathy for a Kirk Cousins that I would a 22-year-old rookie who was not thrown into a very good situation. Because let's be completely honest, first of all, this wasn't even necessarily a bad situation. You got weapons here. You got a guy who is already one of the best running backs in the league here. You had a guy who broke out at receiver this year, another guy who I really think could be a wide receiver one on some teams. A overall, I would say a pretty okay offensive line as far as pass blocking goes. It's a manageable offensive line. You just got to get the ball out quickly, which is what we were told Kirk would be able to do. We were told he was going to be able to get the ball out quickly. He would have a fast release. He'd be on point. All of the things that we were told Kirk would be able to do efficiently is what ended up costing us our season, because the quarterback couldn't do it until it was too late in the year. So with that being said, going back, furious with Kirk Cousins, I don't want to say I'm going to defend Kirk Cousins here, but first and foremost, Kirk Cousins knew. Kirk Cousins is not dumb. Kirk Cousins knew, because any man who can get what is it out of a total of 3 teams, over 300 million guaranteed, that man certainly ain't stupid, because he did it 2 or 3 times with the contract in Minnesota. He did it here, and he did it twice early in his career with Washington when he got the 2 franchise tags. He played the game perfectly as far as how to fleece these teams out of money, how to fool everyone into thinking he was worth more than he actually is. I got to give Kirk credit for that, man. I do. Because Kirk has created generational wealth for his family. He has left his children and their children even in a spot where they're not going to have to worry about, is this bill going to get paid or is that going to get paid. They're going to be able to, live it out a little bit easier than the average person is. And that's because, of how Kirk is able to maximize the most money as possible. And I got to give Kirk credit for that, man. I do. Even though he did it to my team, I'm not happy about it. But on a personal level, taking everything out of it, yeah, I got to give credit to Kirk for doing that. And it's not just that, too. Kirk Cousins, that's why I'm saying he's not stupid. Kirk Cousins probably knew that if he went to because let's be also honest for a second. Kirk, and even though it ended up hurting the team, even though it ended up being absolutely stupid, there are some guys in this league that they just get a slight headache. Coach, I don't think I'm gonna be able to go this Sunday. I'm gonna just have to sit this one out. That's where we're getting with the NFL today. Shit's so soft. Players wanting to take breaks weeks at a time to go gamble in Florida. Y'all know who I'm talking about there. The players just basically they get paid and they think, oh, they create their own hours. They're not part of a team. Kirk didn't. Kirk tried to play through it. Kirk tried to will the team to victory all through it. I gotta respect that. But at the same time, man, for that. But all seriousness, I can't rush against Kirk. Now, I think he needs to get out of here. I think he needs to swag surf his happy ass onto Cleveland or Vegas, Tennessee, wherever. But I'm not gonna hold pity against Kirk Cousins for this. You know why? Because the dumbass motherfucker that's at head coach, that's the head coach of this team. He was because there's no Halo board up in Flowery Branch. He had no choice but to watch what was going on the field. And even though they were doing walkthrough Wednesdays, whenever out on that field, especially after that Saints game, there is no way that Kirk is lighting this. All of a sudden, oh, he comes out to the game, and that arm, basically, all of a sudden, it just falls back off. But during the week, man, it looks fine. No, there's no way that's the case. Raheem Morris knew Kirk Cousins was hurt. He knew. And if he didn't know, he should forget being the Atlanta Falcons head coach. He shouldn't be a head coach in football, period, if he cannot tell that his star quarterback was hurt. You knew the man was hurt. And it's not like you had Kirk Cousins and then Logan Woodside behind him, or you had Kirk Cousins and then Zach Wilson behind him, or Kirk Cousins and then Tommy DeVito behind him. You had the number 8 pick in the draft and a guy that we saw could deliver. And that is why I think a collective between Kirk and Raheem knew that if they were honest with themselves and Kirk ended up, they ended up doing what they probably should have done, which is putting him on IR, and they let Penix see that field. If Penix would have gotten out there a few weeks earlier but still did the same stuff, there's no way you could have taken him off the field. There's no way. No way in hell that you could have justified taking Michael Penix off the field. And if that's the case, and if you are honest with yourself that Kirk is hurt, he's 36, he needs surgery, we need to give this team to Penix. And if we give during that bye week, they really evaluate Kirk. They actually, after that Denver game, they really say, oh, snap, Kirk might actually be hurt. And they say, you're going to Los Angeles, or you're going to Birmingham or somewhere to get the shoulder checked out. And and we're going to know what's going on. Because yes, we got a big investment in you, but we also got an investment to win this year. And if Kirk would have ended up getting hurt, as much as it still would have stung, if you could have gotten, by the time the Washington game comes around, he already more chemistry with a Drake London and a Darnell Mooney and a Kyle Pitts. We literally saw the Falcons trying to make a push for the playoffs these last few weeks with a rookie quarterback who, up until that week leading into the Giants game, had not thrown to Drake London or to Darnell Mooney at all, really ever in his career. Penix was throwing to maybe a little bit of Kadarius Hodge, maybe a little bit of Ray McCloud. He was throwing to Casey Washington. He wasn't throwing to Drake. He wasn't throwing to Mooney. So if you could have gotten a little bit more chemistry going, I'm trying to stay calm. I really am. Because it's making me pissed off thinking about it. Then perhaps this team is in the playoffs. Now, Kirk's got to go. Kirk's got to get out of here. Here is one thing about it. That right there, Kirk revealing that solidifies he won't be a Falcon next year. Because there's no way that they are going to let Kirk back in the building. Because Kirk made them look bad, and rightfully so. They should look bad. Yeah, Kirk should have told them. But Kirk's a player. And let me tell you something. A player that's worth a shit, he ain't going to tell you if he's injured or not. No, you're going to have to force me off that field. And that's what Raheem Morris should have done. He should have put the team in the best position to win because he saw Kirk was hurt. And that leads me to believe, once again, Raheem Morris is incompetent and he should have never been hired as head coach. He should have never been hired as head coach. He was hired because, bottom line, he was the Falcon hire. He was the Falcon guy. He was the guy that they could sell to Arthur Blank. And still, because let me tell y'all something about Arthur Blank. I've done a lot, ever since the season has ended, I've done a lot of thinking about this Falcons organization because this is the longest stretch in Arthur Blank's ownership this team has not been to the playoffs. Matter of fact, before this stretch, the Falcons didn't go, I think, really 3 seasons without making the playoffs. This is now 7. 7 seasons we haven't made the playoffs. Before that, wasn't 3. And one of those years was the year that Vic went to prison. So I look further than this. Look at Atlanta United. Atlanta United, their second year in the league, they won the championship. So I know Arthur nice. And when you're too nice, you're gonna get. Let me tell y'all something. Robert Kraft went to Aaron Hernandez and asked him explicitly, "Did you murder these people? Because if you did, I know there was a and I'm gonna try and I know people live your life. Maybe you serve a few years, but you can live your life. Or maybe I can just get you off entirely." Aaron Hernandez lied to him and said, "No, I didn't do it." And then it came out he did it. Since then, Robert Kraft has had a lot of trust issues. So much so, Robert Kraft got rid of Tom Brady. He didn't care. He didn't hold loyalty to anyone anymore. He just got rid of Mayo after 1 year. Robert Kraft's a really good owner. He is. I think Arthur Blank could be looked at the same way if he put the right people around him, but he hasn't. Through all of and listen, there have been head coaches that have taken advantage of Arthur Blank, players that have taken advantage of Arthur Blank. So many different people to come through. All sorts of people, but the person who has taken advantage the most of Arthur Blank is his right hand man. That goes to show me Arthur Blank, he just doesn't know. So when is it going to get to a point where you come to your senses and you decide, you know what, son? Why don't you start, being more present? Why don't you start speaking? Why don't you start giving me your opinion? Because you're going to be the one running this thing when I pass away. Where's that at? Where is Arthur Blank's son giving his 2 cents? Because I can guarantee you this. Arthur Blank's son probably at least realizes that his father has been taken advantage of. He does. He probably realizes that his father has been taken advantage of, and that is what has held this Falcons team back, because he is keeping people around that continue to all of these people that try to sell Arthur Blank, they take advantage of him. Players do it. Calvin Ridley did it. Kirk Cousins just did it. Hell, you look at how the end of the end of the Matt Ryan. You look at how that ended. You look at how Matt Ryan left Atlanta. Now that was on Arthur Blank. That does make me think maybe Arthur Blank isn't as innocent as we're thinking or leading on. But at the same time, this is really why we are now starting to think of the Falcons, and we haven't wanted to do this. We've wanted to say, even when, let's be clear, we're not a bad team, we're a mediocre team. We're not a bad team, we're mediocre. And that might be worse than being bad, because the 5 pick. That formula, you should certainly at some point finally break through, get a solid core of players, make it to the playoffs, get your quarterback, do something. The Jets are just bad. Jacksonville point with David Tepper, they've been bad. The Falcons have been mediocre. And that might be worse than being bad, because it just gets you to a point. Those 7 wins, I really believe there is a difference between 6 and 7 wins. 6 wins, you're bad. 7 wins, it's just something about how the NFL is set up. You go, okay, there might just be enough. Especially in a shitty division, if we can just, a few of these games can go our way, we can be in it the following year. The Falcons, the one thing about the Falcons is they don't know where they're going. They don't honestly know where they're going to this point. And that is why I say, hopefully, the fact that all these people have been given one more chance with Michael Penix. You can open pray, but you don't know if it's going to work out. You don't. You would like to think it does. You would like to think, because listen, I look at a Joe Burrow and what he did with Cincinnati. Cincinnati, I would still say, is actually, a pretty dysfunctional organization, but Joe Burrow is able to mask a lot of it. He was able to get him to a Super Bowl, and they nearly won the whole damn thing. Got him to an AFC championship. Make Cincinnati at least competitive every year. Now, they can't put a defense around him. If they did, Joe Burrow, we're probably talking about, he could be in the Super Bowl this, on Sunday. Because he's the one guy who can have, who's we've seen have Mahomes' number. And we're hoping that Michael Penix can have that type of effect with the offense we've built. But even at that, how much are they going to do until someone in this organization holds them back? Whether it's the head coach, it's, Rich McKay, Terry, someone holds them back, preventing this team and all the talent that we have on this team from actually accomplishing something. Because we got to think about it. Right now, look at all the talent we have, and we're not in the playoffs. We're not in the playoffs. This is now the 7th year in a row we've missed the playoffs. And you look at teams like Washington. Well, yeah, they got their quarterback, but they got no one else. They got our former coach. But guess what? That owner in Washington and that things around Daniel's way. They just let him do his thing. And that's never can get out of their own way. And this Kirk Cousins situation is another instance of it. Because for all we know, that might not be it. They may have actually have known. Kirk might have actually told them, yeah, listen, my shoulder isn't really of ice on it or what. They said, you'll be fine. I can already imagine, you'll be fine. Go get him. And that's what, and they probably even told him, you don't mention you're injured. Don't mention you're injured. You better not get up and when D-Let asks you that question, say, yeah, I was dealing with a little bit of an injury. Say, no, you're fine. We just got our asses handed to us. So that's really where it's frustrating for me. Because this team, I'm not going to say that, if Kirk Cousins never gets injured. Now, I do think most likely we are in the playoffs. I do. Because I think we would have it. If you look at that Chargers game, if that game goes differently, you're going into the Carolina game, I think, knowing that you're playing a win and end situation. And I do think you bring a different level to it. Let's be honest, the Falcons knew the Saints weren't winning that game. I knew the Saints weren't winning that game, and a lot of other people knew the Saints weren't winning that game. We knew our season was over. We were just holding out hope. We're having to root for other teams to just have a chance to get in. It's absolutely stupid. And when's it going to get to a point where this team actually just takes control? Because we're not seeing it. We're seeing failure after failure, failed experiment after failed experiment. The Kirk Cousins experiment was another failed experiment, and now the Falcons really have one more chance with Michael Penix and Bijan and Drake. That's why this offseason, you got to go out and you got to build the defense. You got to go out and you got to build the defense, and you also have to make sure that the O-line, you got to resign Drew Dahlman. You do. And I don't know if you're going to be able to. I could see Drew Dahlman, a team if they really want to, overpaying for Drew Dalman. I would like to think the Falcons can get him back. Really hate to say this. If we got to cut Grady, we got to cut him. If we got to cut Grady, we got to cut him. And I would still say try to work something out where you can bring him back on a revised deal, maybe extend him, give him, one more 1 or 2 year extension to really spread that money out. If you got to cut Grady, you have to do what you have to do. Because at the end of the day, it is imagine him being anything other than a Falcon. With where Grady is a player that he because we have to finding a suck. Other thing, maybe Kirk said that he doesn't want teams to think, oh, he's really, and wherever he goes, turn back to the Kirk Cousins before. All right now, Cousins. It shows how incompetent this Falcons team has been. And it's just another example how poorly handled this entire debacle was. My if anyone wants to come on, obviously, I know it's you know a weeknight, people getting ready for bed for work, and all that good stuff. But I just had to come on and really does frustrate me. It does. It frustrates me that this is yet another situation of the Falcons being made to look absolutely stupid. But in this instance, yeah, they were stupid because if you couldn't see that Kirk was hurt, you probably are not licensed or probably should not be able to coach in the NFL if you could not see that your quarterback was hurt. That's just me. You got to know what's going on with your team. And I don't know if Raheem Morris knew what was going on with his team. I think Raheem, for the longest time, was in denial mode. Like, man, there's almost no way we're in this losing streak. We're gonna snap out of it. All right, hey, we're gonna snap out of it. Then you realize, oh shit, now Tampa's a game ahead of us. This ain't no joke anymore. It wasn't. And when the Falcons are supposed to be playing the best football, they're playing their worst. That's the other big thing. Whenever we're supposed to be playing our best football, getting ready for the playoffs, wrapping up a division, we're playing our worst and we're letting Tampa get back into the division even after sweeping them. Because I'm going to say this. There's no way that you go from passing for 500 yards in one season to not even finishing that same season as the starter. Not because of injury, but because you just sucked. I'm sorry. That doesn't just happen that rapidly. Something else contributes. And more than likely it was an injury. So the Falcons are going to have to take the brunt for this. Is Kirk blameless in it? No, I'm not going to say he's blameless, but the Falcons are going to have to take the blunt of it. They are. And it gets frustrating, man. It does. Listen, I'm getting ready to get out of here as far as when I'm gonna be going live again, I wanted to talk about Miles Garrett potentially, and like I also wanted to do a still wanted to do kind of a rat looking forward to 2025 fully, a few days after the Super Bowl. Um, but look, I'm gonna say it once, I'm gonna say it again. If it weren't for Michael Penix, weren't for Bijan, it weren't for Drake, this team would be worthless. Worthless. You happen to have a quarterback and you happen to have solid offensive pieces around him. So now it's time to build a defense you all in the next video. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Next one.